Well, needless to say, I've got my fingers in a lot of little pies here. So acupuncture and herbal therapies, we have a multi-practitioner, multi-modality practice here in St. Petersburg, Florida. So we've got three full-time acupuncture physicians, all excellent herbalists, one of which does vitamin and homeopathic injections, facial rejuvenation, and we all kind of have a different background. We've got a massage therapist who used to be a licensed naturopathic physician out west, so she's got a really improved skill set. We've got probably one of the largest herbal apothecaries in the state of Florida here, with well over 800 different herbs from around the world that people can come in and get something like if they need a buck's worth of chamomile or formula filled. So we're filling formulas from a lot of the different practitioners and herbalists and acupuncturists in our community here, as well as shipping out some herbs that are harder to find all over the country. And we've got a crystal shop, which seems like an odd thing in a medical practice, but we find that has energetic action, and in many traditions is some of the herbal medicines. So we use some of those crystals internally as well as externally as medicine, as well as some of the spiritual practices that we use with that. Then in the back, we've actually got a garden space where we've got medicinal plants that are for sale, and a teaching space as well as a research library here. So the other half of what I do is doing lots of teaching as part of the Tradition School of Herbal Studies. I started that almost 15 years ago, where I was just teaching traditional Chinese herbal medicine to people who had an interest in it. And about 4 years ago, I met Renee Prince, and we put together a part that was missing, and we incorporated both the spiritual teaching classes as well as the Western herbal class from beginner all the way through clinician. As part of that, our herbal library, one of the largest of, I would say, certainly of any of the herbal programs in the area, as well as probably one of the largest for any of the acupuncture schools around as well. So we have a lot of practitioners who come by to do research on a patient, or if they're still in school, for research papers and so forth. And then 3 nights a week, we run clinical practice here for interns. So Monday nights, we get interns from East West College, acupuncture school in Sarasota, and Tuesday nights we have our senior interns from the Western Herbal program, and Wednesday nights my Chinese herb students get practice seeing clients from the community. That's the mainstay of what I do. Lots of lecturing. Occasionally I've got a TV series in Ecuador on different traditional healers, and I'm always going off to a conference to lecture on a regular basis. So I got my fingers in a lot of little pies.
Yes, you do. And ever since I've known you, you have, but it's just grown and continues to grow. You're working with so many different people in so many different ways. But focusing in on you specifically, when and why did you get into the wellness field?
You know, it's the same story as a lot of people who get into alternative medicine or traditional medicine, depending on your point of view. And oddly enough, when I was a kid, my mother was a medical writer, over 40 books in print, wrote Dr. Atkins' second book with him back in the early 70s. And we always had lots of medical stuff around. She was writing mostly medical books for the lay public. The Journal of American Medical Association was our bathroom reading in our house. And by the time I was in probably middle school, it was kind of assumed that I was going to go on to med school at some point. And I won't say I was a brilliant student. School always kind of bored me, and at whatever point I was a biochem major, planned on going to med school, and decided I really didn't like school, dropped off and ran away to the Army, and ended up, and I'll spare you the sordid details of all the escapades in between of living in the Everglades and stuff, but ended up as a Desert Storm vet, and basically went from workaholic to homebound and debilitated for about a year afterwards with whatever the heck Desert Storm syndrome is. And although I considered myself a pretty decent herbalist at that point, primarily Western herbal medicine, I was not formally trained or formally practicing. And all of my knowledge and tricks, I wasn't able to get myself well. I was getting worse. And somebody convinced me to go down to the local acupuncture school and see one of the student interns down there, and oddly had a horrible experience. And they convinced me to go a second time, and had just a great practitioner student that saw me. And she did a great job. She took the time to explain to me this idea that there was a diagnostic system based on energetics outside the Western medical system. And for most of my life, I had learned the same thing that a lot of budding herbalists do, that we take echinacea for a cold and St. John's wort for depression. And it was always using the herbs like a drug. And so we needed almost a diagnosis from that Western medical construct before we really knew what we were doing. And that, although I was working in that realm, it didn't really resonate with me the way I wanted it to. And I didn't know you could do this as a profession. And when I was introduced to this idea of an energetic diagnostic system outside the medical construct, all of a sudden the light bulb went off, and I was like, this is what I have to do. And I had danced through probably 20 professions at that point, and all of them interesting and health-related and helping people and caring for people. All of a sudden, the opportunity presented itself for me to run away to acupuncture school as I got better and start to incorporate all my past learning and knowledge from Western herbal systems, as well as nutraceuticals, diet therapies, all of that I could now bring into this beautiful system of traditional Chinese medicine. And it was around this time, I think it was 2001, 2002, I stumbled across the American Herbalist Guild, which was the professional organization for herbalists in the U.S., and really felt drawn to that organization and saw that the one thing so many of these brilliant herbalists lacked was a diagnostic system. And it was at that time that I was like, fine, I'm going to create an herbal program, and I'm going to make sure that there was clinical practice that was supervised to provide people with the best training that I could find, and to make that available to all of the herbalists who really wanted to be clinicians. So by the time I graduated acupuncture school, I was already practicing professionally as an herbalist, and within about 2 years of me graduating, had the school created, and we had the student clinic available so that it provided easy access for the public where price was a challenge, and it was a gateway for them to get that alternative care that so many different people need. And it just continues to blossom from there, and haven't looked back. Longest I've ever done anything in my life.
Wow. I mean, I've followed your path here for the last, I guess, 10 years now. And you, as we already said, you are doing so many different things and interacting with so many different people. I'm curious, what is your favorite part of this work?
Boy, it's tough. Well, I can safely say that the accounting and paperwork is my least favorite. It's probably the thing I'm worst at. I want to say I dance between three favorites. Of the last few years, I've really become a ham in front of the camera to the point where it used to totally traumatize me, and I really enjoy it now. After doing a short bit on Animal Planet, the TV series down in Ecuador, and now we're really working to develop our YouTube channel and trying to do weekly podcast or YouTube promotions. I'm getting comfortable in front of the camera where it's fun and I feel almost like a professional actor. I'd say the teaching, without a doubt, my original bachelor's degree was in education, and I do enjoy standing up in front of a crowd. I guess that's kind of like the actor. Like, I enjoy getting in front of the camera, in front of a crowd, so really get a thrill out of teaching and watching the light bulbs go off in my students. But ultimately, all of that is meaningless if I wasn't working with the patients. And although I don't think I'd want to see 100 patients a week the way I know some people do, I'm able to, at this point, because I have other practitioners, I can almost be selective in the patients I take. And it sounds odd, but I like the hardest patients. I want the ones that nobody else can figure out. And I would say a majority of the time I at least make a little progress, but more often than not that we make dramatic progress. The other day I had a 12-year-old girl came in with cyclic vomiting syndrome, which I'd never even heard of before, and they were going to have to move up to either Boston or Chicago, where the only MDs who knew how to treat that were around. And ultimately, we gave her an herbal formula based on the Chinese diagnostics, and in 9 months she's had one episode and didn't have to go to the hospital. It was resolved within a few hours. And she comes by now just to check in and give me a big hug, and nothing brings more joy than know that we dramatically impacted a whole family and certainly one individual's life in such a dramatic way. So I still get my hands into the mix of it all, 3 days a week that I'm seeing patients. So it gives me good stories to tell when I'm teaching or standing in front of the camera.
Well, you're definitely an amazing teacher and healer, and very much cherished by the community, that's for sure.
Thank you.
So switching subjects, why did you join Holistic Network International?
It's funny. As long as I've been in this realm, there's always been an organization that tried to bring that holistic, that community of healers together. And St. Pete is a unique place. I think our town continues to get better and better the longer I'm here. I've been here on and off since '79, I think. And I've watched this town become progressive and really gel as a community. But I think, especially for the small businesses like me, that we get so caught up in our day-to-day stuff, just trying to make things happen to pay the bills. We don't always find time to connect with those like-minded folks that are in our community. And although we may be in the same profession as acupuncturists or herbalists, or just related things, everything from dentistry to MD to massage therapist to yoga instructor, we all have that same goal and that same end that we're searching for. And so for an opportunity for us all to come together, it's always funny. It's not so much a networking group as an opportunity for us to come together to share information, what works, what doesn't, as a lot of us have activities that are open for vendors and community to coordinate those as a group. It's an opportunity for us to create the community for ourselves. As all of us expand out into that community in Tampa Bay, and now because you've taken the holistic network on an even grander scale, that we can connect outside of even our local physical community and connect now with a larger audience nationally or internationally. So we all need community to keep ourselves healthy.
And what would you say is the greatest benefit of being a member of that network?
Now that's always a tough one. So there's so many, and one of the great things, because we do teach so many classes both online as well as here on location, the network has done a great job of helping to promote that on the internet, on Facebook. But ultimately, I think it's connecting with those other people in our similar professions, that both, because I can't stop but teaching, to share my successes and failures as to what's worked as a business person with those new people. And we always see so many new faces, the new graduates, the new people to the community that were successful outside of this area who come in, but also just to share our successes and our frustrations as business owners, as healers, as part of a community that's trying to improve our community, and now to be able to do that outside. I think that's probably the single most important part, is our ability to support each other as healers, because we need it as much as the folks we help.
Great, thank you. And so we've touched on how the network crosses various disciplines, and even in your work, you're crossing different areas. So maybe think about either one of those areas or even the broadness of all the different things you're doing. What would you say is a key challenge facing yourself and in your line of work and others?
It's interesting, and I wear so many hats. That there's those challenges as an acupuncture physician that are unique. I would say one of the biggest issues is educating the public. As a primary care physician here in Florida, that we actually get as academically as much training as an MD. They do way more clinical hours. We only do about 1,000 hours of clinical time. But we see a lot of encroachment on our profession. So we see physical therapists who I refer out to all the time because it's a vital part of getting people recovered and to continue to be healthy. And with literally no training, they can do dry needling, which is the same thing. And oftentimes are injuring or causing pain instead of referring out to other acupuncturists. And so we see some really poorly trained issues, and the public doesn't know the difference between acupuncture, dry needling, or medical acupuncture, or a certified acupuncturist versus an acupuncture physician, the nuance of languaging. So educating the public is a huge part. And we're finding that there is greater acceptance for the acupuncture realm as we see the opiate epidemic, that now the AMA is actually recommending acupuncture as an alternative that should be tried long before long-term opiate care because of all the risks and the safety of acupuncture. And I would say of chiropractic and physical therapy, yoga, all of these things are now being embraced by the dominant medical system through the AMA. And so I really understanding where each of our role plays so that we can all play well in the sandbox together. But in the herbal realm, it's different challenges. In the herbal realm, I would say there is so much misinformation by the general public about the safety and the effectiveness of herbs. There's no licensure for herbal medicine. So it's hard for everybody to recognize the difference between Googling herbs for pain and going to see an herbalist who does a full intake medical history, looks at all the different aspects, truly that holistic approach, looking at the impacts of diet, exercise, emotional, spiritual challenges, all that can affect the human being. So I think that's probably the greatest challenge for herbalists is to educate the public and the medical community in the benefits and the role that herbalists can have in the overall wellness of our community as a whole. I don't know, that was a long answer for a simple question.
I would not expect anything less.
Right.
Well, Bob, thank you for sharing your thoughts and a bit about yourself and your work today. Before we conclude, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I always tell everybody, become involved in your community and in your own health and wellness. If you're in the realm, if you don't check out the holistic network, well, let's hope that there's an organization similar to that in your community. And for each one of us, more importantly, is to nurture ourselves. So hopefully we have a lot of other healthcare practitioners in the realm who are going to listen to this in the future. We are always the first to neglect ourselves, and I'm leading the parade of guilt on that one. And this organization can be one of those realms of doing that. The Internet is another great outlet for us. And for all the herbalists that I hope are involved in the future, learn the herbs in your community. Ultimately, nature provides everything we need, and that may be the weeds growing out of the cracks of the sidewalk, or the practitioner sitting next to you at a holistic network meeting.